Hey fellow A&P nerds, just me. You see me here in the little inset picture. Yes, same guy that's in all those live videos. Here with a brief little lecture that I like to call, hey, let's memorize the cranial nerves. You, of course, don't need to be looking at me. Instead, you want to see this super fantabulous artwork that you have above me. So let's take a look at that. What you're looking at here is a very nice piece of artwork that I made for you with my tablet pen here on the computer. And I say that sarcastically because it's really not that nice. But what I show you is the classic mnemonic device, the classic memory trick for memorizing the 12 pairs of cranial nerves that the human body has. So if you happen to have your textbook handy, and you should have a textbook somewhere at your disposal when you watch this, and you probably have some picture somewhere that looks something like this. The inferior aspect of the human brain showing us those 12 cranial nerve pairs coming off in order 1 through 12 by Roman numerals, of course. 1 through 12, you have to use Roman numerals for these cranial nerves. What I'm going to show you in addition to the artwork that I made is this handout that I typically give my first semester A&P students. If you feel like it, go ahead and copy this if you want to. It's just a sheet that lays out the cranial nerves for us. You can see names, numbers, modality, sensory, motor, or mixed, and function just in a couple short words. Maybe for a person to study, say, hint, hint, for a multiple choice test, which many A&P tests happen to be. If we go back to my super fantastic artwork, what I've chosen to do here is show you the classic, very classic method for memorizing the 12 cranial nerve pairs in order. This one's been around, believe it or not, longer than I have. It reads, on old Olympus towering top, a Finn and German viewed some hops. I'm going to say that again. On old Olympus towering top, a Finn and German viewed some hops. What you see on top of the mountain, to your left, the mountain being Olympus. I see two people. One from Finland, one from Germany. Our German person right here can be identified because they are wearing very fashionable lederhosen, as well as I can draw them with a pen tablet. Our Finnish person is seen right here because what are they doing? They're dancing like a prime minister. And between you and me, what the heck is wrong with that? And who says I can't be topical and up to date with the news? A dancing prime minister. So, a person from Finland, a person from Germany, gazing down upon a field of grain. The grain is hops. You've heard of hops, sometimes used to flavor certain carbonated beverages that people like. So if I zoom back out, the mental image is two people on a mountain gazing down upon a field of grain. On old Olympus towering top, a Finn and German viewed some hops. And of course, each first letter of each consecutive word represents what? A different cranial nerve. Number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm just writing on this side so you can see it. 10, 11, and 12. 12 pair of cranial nerves that the human body has. These would be those nerves that are actually attached to the brain. Each nerve has a word name, olfactory, optic, oculomotor, and so on. Each word has a Roman numeral associated with it. Make sure you know both. On old Olympus, here I'll put dots in so you can follow along. On old Olympus, towering top. Remember, you can pause this video anywhere and copy this information down if you wanted to. You probably already have something like this. On old Olympus, towering top, Finn and German viewed some hops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 pair of cranial nerves on old Olympus, towering top, of Finn and German viewed some hops. Now, I said that this mnemonic device is the old one, the classic one. Heck, it's older than I am, and that's saying something, everyone. On old Olympus, towering top, a Finn and German viewed some hops. Now, this is the polite one. Some of you, perhaps going into one of the healthcare professions, you may know some other less polite, not YouTube-friendly versions, and there's plenty of those too. This one's a nice standard mnemonic device for memorizing the 12 cranial nerve pairs in order. So think of the two people on the mountain looking down on the valley of grain, seeing the hops. On old Olympus, towering top, a Finn and German viewed some hops. We'll spend our time going through this handout and reinforcing some of this memorization. So cranial nerve pair number 1, the olfactory nerve pair. Remember, there would be two, one on each side, one right, one left. Those bulbs, maybe you've seen. This nerve pair is completely sensory in its function, sensory from the nose. The olfactory nerve pair, sensory from the nose. Now, I always have another mnemonic device that I use for this one. I think of where my father worked, my grandfather, my male cousins, my male uncles on that side all worked at a meat packing plant, which was, everyone, an old factory. So I think of that meat packing plant, and I think of the days where they would burn carcasses at that meat packing plant, and boy, did that old factory smell bad. So the smell of an old factory. Cranial nerve number 1, completely sensory in its function. No motor fibers in that nerve. Cranial nerve pair number 2, the optic nerves, are also completely sensory in their function, sensory from the retina of your eye. In your lectures, when you learn about the rods and the cones and how visual physiology works, these photoreceptors send action potentials by way of a couple intermediate neurons through the optic nerve to your brain, completely sensory for sight, for vision. The next pair, number 3, you will notice that I colored in red. So if I was a person copying this down, I would make the first two blue because blue is the traditional sensory color. See, this blue is usually what we use to denote sensory function. Red for motor, black for mixed. The oculomotor nerve, if you didn't pick up motor, it's right there in the name, totally motor in its function, meaning that this nerve pair carries signals not into the brain but out of the brain. And it controls the iris, that colored part of your eye, the lens, the levator palpebrae muscle, and 3 out of the 4 rectus muscles of your eye. Eye muscles, oculomotor, cranial nerve pair number 3. On old Olympus, olfactory, optic, oculomotor. Cranial nerve pair number 4, the trochlear nerve, is also completely motor in its function. It controls the superior oblique muscle, which happens to be a muscle, if this was your eyeball, that's an eyeball. The superior oblique muscle is a really small muscle, one of the extrinsic eye muscles, and it comes down and it attaches to the sclera, the hard part, the white part of your eye, at an angle, and it goes through this little connective tissue pulley called the trochlea. That's where this name comes from, of the nerve. The trochlear nerve only controls one eye muscle, the superior oblique muscle. Cranial nerve pair number 5, the trigeminal nerve. This is the first nerve that we say is mixed in function, which means that it's sensory and motor. Now, I don't want to bore you with lecture stuff, but if you think of a typical nerve, it's got a bunch of axons in it. This one has some sensory axons going toward the brain and some motor axons coming out from the brain. So it's got two-way traffic. That's what we mean when we say it's a mixed nerve. So the trigeminal nerve is the first one that's mixed in function. Sensory from the face and the gums. Sensory from your face and your gums. This is the nerve, the cranial nerve, that all the dental people study so much. This is the cranial nerve that all the dental people study so much because it's deadening sensory branches of this nerve that dental anesthesias do. The gums and the teeth, right? So sensory from the face and the gums. Motor to control muscles of chewing. Masticating muscles, which you might know from your lab, are the temporalis and the masseter primarily. The first mixed nerve, number 5. Cranial nerve pair number 6, the abducens, controls the lateral rectus muscle, which is a muscle on the side of your eye that makes you look sideways. And people used to say it abducts the eye, hence the abducens name. But this one's completely motor in function. And I want to pause here and show you that we have 3, number 3, number 4, and number 6. 3 of the cranial nerve pairs completely, totally dedicated to controlling musculature of the eye. Okay, there he is again. I don't know if you've thought of your head as an anatomical structure today. If you haven't, do it right now. Think of your head as an anatomical, specifically a motor or skeletal muscle structure. What parts of your head perform complicated movements? Well, there's really only 2 contenders going for number 1. The 2 complicated parts of your head that would require very small motor units, lots of fine control, would be your eyes and possibly your tongue. The rest of your head is just not that complicated from a muscular standpoint. So motor complexity of the eyes, yes, you change the size of your pupil, you change the shape of your lens, you accommodate visually, you look all around in different directions. Lots and lots of nervous tissue dedicated to the control of eye muscles. So again, 3 out of those 12 cranial nerve pairs solely responsible or entirely responsible for controlling eye musculature. That brings us to number 7, another pretty large cranial nerve pair, the facial nerves. Remember, one on each side. Another mixed nerve, so it has sensory and motor function. Sensory from the front of the tongue and the palate. About the front 1/3 of your tongue or so, and the palate, that's me clicking my tongue, the roof of your mouth. You don't have any taste buds on your palate. Sorry, Gordon Ramsay, but you do have sensation there. Can't you burn it with hot cheese on the top of a pizza? Burn the roof of your mouth and feel it. Ouch, ouch. Sure. So you have sensation from there. Motor, which is where the nerve gets its name, for control of facial expression muscles, as well as the salivary and lacrimal or tear glands. Facial nerve. On old Olympus towering top, a Finn and German. That brings us to cranial nerve pair number 8, completely sensory in its function, the auditory or vestibulocochlear nerve. Auditory, that's the old-fashioned name. Vestibulocochlear, that's the new 21st century name. I suggest you wait until you go to lab or watch my Professor A&P lab video if you want to see the inner ear parts. Vestibulocochlear is an anatomical name. So the cochlea is that big snail shell part of the ear, and the vestibule, the saccule and utricle, are right off of that, and a branch of this nerve comes out of those. So some people like to go with vestibulocochlear because it's anatomical. Tells me right where this nerve is. Some people like auditory, that's the physiological name. This is the one I prefer, and not just because it fits into this. Auditory, number 7, see? But I like that because I prefer the physiology to remember hearing and sensory balance. Everybody forgets sensory balance, so be careful there. That brings us to nerve pair number 9, the glossopharyngeal or pharyngeal nerve pair. Mixed in function, sensory and motor. Sensory from the back 2/3 of the tongue and the pharynx. Partly why it has this name. The pharynx is the back of your throat. The place where you make that noise, if you ever make that noise. So that's your pharynx, the place where your nasal and oral cavities meet one another. The motor function of this nerve pair is related because some of those muscles are involved in swallowing of the pharynx. So glossopharyngeal nerve pair, sensory and motor, back of the tongue and the pharynx, controlling the swallowing muscles. We have another mixed nerve, the vagus nerve. Sounds like Las Vegas, but spelled differently. You can see that. This is mixed in its function, sensory and motor. Sensory from your thoracic and abdominal organs. Think viscera, which also starts with a V. Gut. Motor control, at least parasympathetic, to those same organs. If you don't mind, and I guess even if you do, I'm going to draw a stomach right here. Or at least my best rendition of. And I want you to imagine that I punch you in the stomach. Now, I'm an anatomist. I didn't punch you in the abdomen. I punch you in the organ. So I punch your stomach. wouldn't your stomach experience pain? You have sensory neurons that start here and go up to your brain. This is the sensory part of this nerve pair. And maybe you're hungry right now, your stomach is growling. Wouldn't you have motor neurons that come back and control the smooth muscle in the wall of this organ? These would be in the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve, motor and sensory from your guts, your organs. We're already at number 11, if you can believe it. The spinal accessory, or accessory, a little more modern to just say accessory. I prefer to say spinal accessory, partly because it fits here. Spinal accessory, right? See that? And it's just a habit that I've gotten into. If you want to use accessory, you have to use a different mnemonic device, right? So spinal accessory, motor only in its function, and it controls one of my favorite names, the sternocleidomastoid and trapezius muscles, muscles of your neck and shoulders. You've probably already seen those, perhaps in your lab. If you haven't, well then go ahead and watch the Professor A&P lab video where I tell you about those muscles. Totally motor in his function, controlling sternocleidomastoid and trapezius muscles. The last cranial nerve pair, number 12, the hypoglossal, also motor, controlling the other complicated motor part of your head. You noticed above I had sensory from the front and back of the tongue, but no motor to the tongue until I get down here to the hypoglossal nerve pair. The hypoglossal nerves. 12 cranial nerves. You need to know them most likely by their name and their Roman numeral, their modality, sensory, motor, or mixed, and their function, which I have abbreviated here for you on the side. A way to memorize the modalities of these nerves, are they sensory, motor, or mixed? I'm going to write down some letters here for you. You just watch me do it. As you might guess, I've done this a few times. Now, you will notice, if I was to number these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. S for sensory, M for motor, B for both. I can't say mixed because that's also an M, right? So I say both sensory and motor is what I mean there. Now follow along with me. Some say marry money, but my brother says big bucks matter more. I'm going to say that again. Some say marry money, but my brother says big bucks matter more. Just a way to memorize the modalities of these 12 cranial nerve pairs. And yes, I know some of you've studied this before. I'm aware that sometimes people don't say bucks here. They refer to anatomical structures, but we'll stick with that. Some say marry money, but my brother says big bucks matter more. "12 cranial nerves in order by Roman numerals, name, number, modality, and function. And of course, please feel free to pause and copy this handout down nice and slowly. You can pause it any point here and copy those down. This is a handout I usually just give my students. It's the act of writing it down that might help you better memorize your cranial nerves. So, good luck to you on your A&P test that includes the 12 cranial nerve pairs. I'll see you in the next video.